So I think it's important to remember that because your IRA is making the investment and technically not you personally, that you're going to find with all administrators, they want the IRA titled a certain way. So with
Mhm.
Advanta, we want it Advanta IRA Services, LLC, FBO, and your name and your account number, or you can leave off your name and just use your account number. And when you're kind of giving that, you're showing.
Hello, welcome to the Night Fire Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Martinez. Today we have a special guest, Larissa Green. No, I'm just kidding. It's Larissa Green. But for everybody here, thanks for tuning in. Larissa, thanks for coming on the show today. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am awesome. I'm awesome. Excited to have you here. I am excited to learn about IRAs, which is what your specialty is. Can you tell people a little bit about you and how long you've been doing stuff with IRAs? And let's jump right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with Advanta for almost 13 years now. And really, my career in retirement accounts started with Advanta when I was hired way back when, as they say. I really just started helping out with back office stuff. So anything that they needed, the company was just starting to grow at that time. And they said, hey, we could use help with opening new accounts. We need help with getting checks coded for payment and things of that nature. And if you're not familiar with the self-directed IRA, there's a lot of that stuff going on in the background. So just very simply, a self-directed IRA holds a lot of different things outside of the market like real estate. And so you can imagine there are, vendors to be paid. So people are buying real estate and they need to pay painters and plumbers and electricians. And they have tenants paying rent and all of the things that go into real estate. And when you hold that real estate in an IRA, there's a lot going on in the background there. So when I started with Advanta, they just needed some help and I started doing that. And over time, really learning the business, I did a lot of different things. So I helped clients with investments, I helped with transfers and opening new accounts. And then about 11 years ago, I started in education and business development. And here we are. And it has been just really, I've had an amazing time with the company because not only have I been able to help people with their IRAs, but I have learned so much for myself. So it's really been kind of a growth opportunity for me as well because I now self-direct my IRA. I like to do private money lending, but also I am in this unique position where I get to go to classes and learn new things, but also represent the company. And so that's a little bit about what I do, but I really enjoy working with Advanta, and I also really enjoy doing a lot of the networking that I get to do because of it.
No, it's a what is this? You get a if you enjoy doing your work, it's not really work type of
That's
thing.
right. That's right. It's so true.
It
Yes.
left my head somewhere. I don't know where it's at anymore. So for a new person, maybe they're not well off. Let's kind of talk into like the beginnings of an IRA when you start investing, your personal like understanding your life goals, all that basic stuff. For a lot of people, might not be at that stage, or may not think they're at that stage. You know what I mean? What do you say to people that like I don't have a lot of money, but I think about these retirement future and investing with that, but
Mhm.
how do I like when am I ready? As the listeners listen to this, when am I ready to start an IRA?
I think that's a great question. Just keeping in mind, I'm not, a tax advisor, I'm not a financial advisor, but what I would say is even if you're not ready to self direct, I would talk to your accountant about making contributions to an IRA. I would talk to your, maybe your local bank and find out more about starting an IRA because I think it's a little cliche, but don't we all say like we wish we had started sooner? And I think that
Absolutely.
that is so true. And, it doesn't take a lot of money to start an IRA. Self-directing an IRA doesn't take a lot of money either. But just in general, IRAs, it doesn't take a lot of money to start. And, if you're helping that retirement account grow before you know it, it's going to be in a position where you just didn't realize it could be in just a couple of years. And so I think that's important for everybody. And like I said, talk to your accountant about that and say, help me figure out how much I can put in monthly or maybe even just once a year, but help me figure out how I can do that so that I can start saving for retirement.
I know you know this, but what are the limits right now for submitting to IRA annually?
So if it's just a traditional or a Roth, and meaning an account for an individual, it's 7,000 or 8,000 if you're over the age of 50. There are other types of accounts that are going to allow you to put much more in on an annual basis. In some cases, 70,000, sometimes over 80,000, again, just depending on your age. But typically, you're going to see people using traditionals and Roth IRAs as the primary tool when they start out, and those are 7 and 8,000 for over the age of 50.
Awesome, awesome. Now, I get that I've come across people with small amounts in their IRA. I don't know if you can give like 100% advice on this, but people struggle with what they can self direct into when they have small amounts because they feel like I only have $5,000 or $10,000 in an account. What options do I really have to invest in? And I know
Mhm.
there's a lot of cool like smaller things like that, but I'm really curious to hear because I don't know these things. I'm not into
Yeah.
this.
Yep, exactly. So we actually do see a lot of people using smaller amounts of money. And it's not just when you're getting started, right? Sometimes it's because you have funds left over, or you have income on an investment. And that might be a smaller investment that you have, and you have a little bit of income coming in. What do you do with it? But we have seen people really put on their entrepreneurial hats and really put that money to work. It could be as simple as buying gold and silver bars and coins. So
Mm,
right now we're seeing that option a lot. And sometimes you can buy smaller items, smaller, instead of buying a gold bar, you can buy a few coins or whatever it might be. So you can put, I don't want to say small amounts of money, but smaller amounts of money
yeah.
to work when you're buying something like precious metals. You can also, I see people buy like stock and startup companies, for example. So, I've seen people invest, just a couple $100 into things like angel investing and crowdfunding. So there are opportunities out there. Like I said, you have to be out there looking and kind of keep your eyes open for that. Something that we see a lot in real estate would be real estate options. So we're not talking hundreds of dollars, but sometimes low, thousands of dollars into a real estate option could work potentially. And you can also partner. So a lot of times people say, well, you can't commingle personal funds and IRA funds, and that's true. But you can partner, and so you can take that account, your smaller account, and partner it with financial friends who might have larger accounts or larger amounts of money into a deal. Or you can do something like a wrap loan, which that might be maybe a little more advanced strategy, but it's definitely something where you can take maybe $1,000 or $2,000 and put it and wrap another existing loan or a loan that's being created so that you can have a higher gain. So again, some of them are going to be more advanced, but there's definitely ways to put that money to work. One of the questions I get a lot is, if you're just starting your Roth IRA or maybe your health savings account and you're just making an annual contribution, what can you do with that money? If you're already self-directing your traditional IRA, for example, or you're planning on moving an old employer plan, that HSA can partner with your traditional IRA or your Roth IRA or your children's Roth IRAs in order to make that money work and put it to work in an investment together.
Mm. That's very interesting. I didn't understand the partnering in the commingling thing, but tell me a little about precious metals. It just piqued my interest. Do you guys hold the precious metals like in a vault, or does the self-directed person kind of put it in their vault and they want to
Mhm.
sell it? It kind of goes back to the IRA. I didn't know you could buy precious metals with your IRA. I had no idea.
Yep, you can. You can't hold them yourself, and we don't hold them. We work with 8 depositories, so you can choose your depository. Yep. And yep, so it would be prohibited for you yourself to hold them or any person that's considered disqualified. But yes, you have a lot of options in depositories, and you actually choose where you're going to purchase from, and then you work with the vendor and then the depository to make that purchase, and then we just coordinate with them so that IRA funds are making that purchase and getting that purchase over to the depository for you.
Interesting. See, learn new stuff all the time. I enjoy conversations like this because like it's one of those things where you don't know until you ask, and you don't know until you ask the right person. Um, let's talk about. I want to talk about a little bit. Like you mentioned that you're investing with like hard money. Is that like notes or is that just straight like first position like partials? Like what type of investing can people do with the IRA, and what are you doing currently?
So The answer is yes, you can do all of those things with your IRA. So you can buy partials, you can buy existing notes, you can buy, or you can invest in new. They don't have to be first position. The IRS doesn't have any real guidelines on that. So it could be a second or a third. And for people listening, sometimes people say, well, why would you invest in a second? Well, for example, sometimes you'll find wrap loans are going to be in second position. But again, when you're investing, you're always doing your own due diligence. So even if you don't self-direct with Advanta, just know that when you're self-directing your account, it's going to be up to you to do your own due diligence. And I like to say, feel comfortable with the deal and the person you're dealing with. So when you're looking at something like a second position or a third position, you're looking at the person you're dealing with, the deal, is there enough equity in the property? Your self-directed administrator like Advanta, we're not going to give you those, that advice. We're going to say, if you're comfortable with this deal, then we're going to help you do it in the name of the retirement account. So it'll be important for you to look at that. But certainly you can make those investments. So if you came to us and said, hey, this is a third position note, but the equity is XYZ, so I'm going to do it, then we're just going to say, okay. But we do see people make those investments in different positions and different strategies. And it could be, that they're investing, partnering with their spouse's account, or they're investing with a mortgage broker, for example. There's a lot of that. So it just depends. For me personally, like I look at every deal, and if it makes sense, I'll look at that. But that kind of goes back to, so sometimes people will say to me, well, what are your guidelines? And I think something that I learned from going to different classes and networking with people is that I will look at a deal and determine my guidelines or what I would require for that deal based on the deal itself.
Hmm. Now, you mentioned about people you know and trust and all that stuff. I've come across different situations where people invest with their IRA and they're having to take legal action and do other things like that. How does that work with the IRA as far as like, because I know you as a self-directed IRA you choose in what things you do and how you do it, but
Right.
how does like attorneys work or anything like that? Any like litigation? Do you have to bring in an attorney that represent the IRA as the? I don't know how it works. I'm just curious.
Yes, I would say, I don't deal on the legal side that often, but yes, if you needed to hire an attorney, then technically it is the IRA hiring the attorney. So for example, if you had a piece of real estate, then your IRA, so you would choose the attorney, but your IRA is hiring the attorney for that proceeding. So, that is something to be aware of. Again, maybe part of your due diligence,
Yeah.
in knowing what you might have to know in the future in the event that you have a tenant that doesn't pay or a borrower that doesn't pay.
It's very interesting, very very interesting. I know with the IRAs like it just gets it can get difficulty and muddied, and a lot of times it works with a good company and a good custodian that's going to help you walk through these things because you can't do certain things in certain ways that you normally
Right.
could if you were the owner or your LLC was the owner.
Mhm.
How does like processing paperwork and all that stuff, because I've heard, not that I've heard it about Advanta, but I've heard bad things about like custodians. They're very scrupulous on different types of transactions, or they're very overbearing on the processing. What's the good and bad that comes with that with different companies?
So I think it's important to remember that because your IRA is making the investment and technically not you personally, that you're going to find with all administrators, they want the IRA titled a certain way. So with
Mhm.
Advanta, we want it Advanta IRA Services, LLC, FBO, and your name and your account number, or you can leave off your name and just use your account number. And when you're kind of giving that, you're providing information that says, hey, IRS, this is an investment of my retirement account. And so I think it's important to know what that vesting is so that when you're going into something, when you turn in that documentation that supports that investment, you know what that vesting should look like. At Advanta, we provide everybody an account manager. So everyone has an account manager. Each account manager has a certain number of accounts so that they can help you on a personalized level so that, you're not saying, well, I don't hear from them or I can't get them on the phone. and you have their direct extension, their direct email address, and that individual is helping you with everything, making annual contributions, making investments, transferring funds, whatever it might be. And so that makes the process a lot easier, so that if you turned in paperwork and said, hey, I'm doing this private money loan, here's the note and mortgage, and we looked at it and said, hey, the lender should be your IRA, not you personally, then we send it back to you and say, hey, Daniel, can you get this fixed? Instead of you having to wait for it to be reviewed and it goes in a queue and things like this. So we do our business a little bit differently. So that really expedites the process. But if you're not dealing with Advanta, just know that that's what they're looking for. And so if you're not sure what the vesting on your IRA account is, before you put that paperwork together, before your attorney does it, before the investment provider does it, you could reach out to them and say, hey, what is the titling supposed to be? And then give it to whoever's preparing the paperwork for you, so you can skip that step where they have to send it back and say your paperwork doesn't have the correct information on it. So that's going to be number one. Number two is just making sure you're available, because in our processing, we do an outgoing phone call just to make sure that you're ready for money to go out. And sometimes that can be difficult. Some people work during the day, some people are overseas or traveling with family, whatever it might be. And so if you have an investment that you want to get done, make yourself available to your administrator so they can reach out to you and say, hey, this is what needs to be updated in order to finalize this transaction. And some administrators are going to be tougher than others.
Absolutely. I hear the good and the bad. I'm sure you do too. I want to ask a question about what is this? Creating an account and transferring funds over. I've heard of some IRA companies, there's like a fee to transfer over, and account creation and stuff like that. Can you state what they are, or what the general state of that, what that is?
So generally, you're going to have an account opening fee. Whether or not you have a transfer fee, I haven't seen those too often, aside from like wiring fees. So if you choose to have money sent by wire, you're going to have a wire fee. You can always avoid that by check. Typically, I don't see people opt for a check very often, but most administrators are going to have their fee schedule online. So you can look at our fee schedule on our website, advantaira.com. You can look at many of them online, so you can always do that. For account opening for Advanta, it's just $50. But as far as actually transferring money in, like I said, you can avoid wiring fees. You will have, when you're transferring money from another custodian, we kind of have to make requests the way they ask us to. So if they say, we'll only mail a check, for example, and there are some administrators out there, they'll only mail a check, and we'll usually let the client know, like, I know you'd really like this wired, but we can't request it by wire. We have to do it by check. Or some people will say, yep, absolutely, as long as they can, just wire it. I'd rather that money get there faster, whatever it might be. So it just depends. And then, depending on the investment and the type of account, with Advanta, you have two options on the fee schedule. One is a per asset type of annual fee, and then the other is based on total value. And one or the other might make more sense for you, really just depending on the types of investments you're making. So if you're doing, for example, a lot of short-term investments, if you're doing something where, you're doing one investment at a time, but it's long-term, it could make more sense for you to go with the first option or the second option.
I'm glad you brought that up, as far as like the transaction fees and stuff like that, because I think people, they don't really account for that, because they might not know what they're doing. And can you change that annually, or how often can you change that, especially at Advanta?
Yep. So you can change it when it makes sense for you to do so. But the per asset fee is billed once a year on the anniversary date of the investment. And the option based on total value is broken up and charged quarterly. So what we try to do is, when somebody is opening an account, we try to talk to them about their investment plans right now and see what makes the most sense for them, because you can see where, the other option charged quarterly, does it overlap? If you start out with annually and you go quarterly, do they overlap and you pay a little more in fees? Or maybe it makes sense for you to do so. So it depends. Usually I tell people, if you're starting out with one investment and it's going to go at least 1 year, then I would go with the first option. And then before you make the next investment, call your account manager and say, this is the investment I'm making. This is how much more money I'm going to add to the account in order to make that investment. And they can kind of walk you through what might make more sense.
No, that's very good. It's very good. I think it's important to talk about like fee structure and everything like that, because like I said, I talked to a lot of people and they're like, man, the fees kill me. Can we do something like, can we do something longer? Can you roll it or something like that? Depending on what the fee is, and they'll just assign the loan or something. So there's different things like that. So I think it's very keen, and it's cool to have open conversations about that. What has been um, what has been like your what is a question that somebody has asked that I haven't asked? Because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I asked pretty good questions, but some
Mm-hmm.
what's something that people need to know about IRAs that maybe it's something I overlooked?
So something that I get asked all the time is what type of IRA can you self-direct? And for some reason, I think because a Roth IRA is after tax, that they think it's only Roth. So anything that ends in IRA can be self-directed. And then I mentioned health savings accounts and education savings accounts. So those can all be self-directed. That's the first thing. I'm not really sure why people always think that they have to have a Roth IRA, because somebody will say to me, I'm not ready to pay the taxes to put it into a Roth IRA. So that's not the case. You can self-direct anything as long as it ends in IRA. And then we also get the question a lot is, when I make this investment, how quickly do I have to pay it back? So the assumption is that this is more of like a loan from your retirement account. And people ask me that all the time. If I buy 123 Main Street with my retirement account, how soon do I have to pay that money back? It is not a loan of the IRA. It is an investment of the retirement account. So just like you hold stocks, bonds, mutual funds, when you hold those types of investments, I think they're just so common that we don't even think about it. It's kind of set it and forget it. We pull up our statement, we see, the name of the brokerage firm, and then we see the names of the stocks and how much we hold in that stock, and we understand it's being held by the retirement account. Real estate investments, gold and silver bars and coins, even things like cryptocurrencies, and private placements. This is all the same. It is held by the retirement account. So if you have an Advanta IRA, when you pull up your statement, if you've made investments, you're going to see those investments listed. And remember, we talked about that important step of making sure everything is vested properly in the name of the IRA. And that is why it's showing it as an investment of the account. So you're not borrowing it. There's nothing you're going to pay back. You're making an investment. And now, as a self-directed account holder, you're going to make the decisions as to, how long will you hold it, or what terms did you agree to with your borrower? What does the limited partnership look like when you signed that contract and got into the deal? Things like that. So these are still investments of the account. You're not borrowing any money from the retirement account.
I have a really good question I just thought of. Can a IRA become a participant or part owner in an LLC?
It can. Yep. A lot of times you'll see people term that checkbook IRA if it's a single member, or maybe, just a few people involved, so that the IRA can have checkbook control. So if you see single member IRA or single member LLCs for the purpose of checkbook control, you'll also see that with trusts. So personal property trusts and land trusts, you'll see the IRA as the owner essentially, or grantor and beneficiary.
Yeah.
And that will kind of give that individual some checkbook control over that account. But it can also, be a member of an LLC for investment purposes. So maybe there's a subscription agreement, or there's, an operating agreement showing all the members, and the IRA can do that. Or you also do see like limited partnerships where IRAs are a limited partner to some syndication or private placement.
Interesting. No, that's um, can an IRA partner with your own business, or is that commingling?
It could be commingling. The answer is probably not, but this is now a gray area where, the rule is if you own less than 50% and you don't necessarily control it, then there's potential there. But this is where I would definitely say, talk to an attorney, someone who can help you structure something like this, because in the rules, it says you can't have a current benefit from your IRA. And so if you're taking that IRA money and you're putting it into your business in some way, now you're talking about, is there a current benefit? Are you controlling that money? But further to that, there is one exception to that rule, and it's called a rollover for business startup. Are you familiar with that at all?
Oh, let's cover it. This is good.
Yeah.
Good.
So a rollover for business startup, or ROBS plan, is when you take you create a new 401k, you roll money into it either from an old employer plan or an IRA, and then you have a new business or business startup, and it has to be a C corporation. And then the 401k can buy shares of that C corp so that you are funding that business. And now these rules are going to be different from that first set of rules where you can't benefit. And again, this is where I would definitely recommend having an accountant or an attorney help you structure this, because there are some rules involved. I mentioned it has to be a C Corp. The 401k is buying shares into that business. You do have to have the shares valued every year. What are you allowed to do with that money? There's going to be, some things that you should be aware of. But also, when you are having, if you're making the decision to maybe bring employees on board, what do you have to also offer them in terms of the 401k and possibly buying shares into the business? There's some more things to know when you're looking at rollover for business startups. So I would recommend talking to an accountant that's familiar with that. But it is certainly a possibility, and it kind of the rules for that are different than the no personal benefit rules that you see typically in a self-directed IRA.
Interesting. I'm glad I asked that question. I had no idea. This is one of the things I love about podcasting. I don't know a lot of these topics through in and throughout because I'm not in the business 100%. So it's just you learn by having conversations or listening to conversations, and you get better and do better. I think we're going to end it here. This has been really amazing. I have Advanta IRA.com/Lissa Green. Where else can people find you online?
Yeah, we're on Facebook, Advanta IRA. You can find our YouTube channel, search Advanta IRA. So there's a lot of opportunities there too, because we have ongoing education. So definitely check out our YouTube channel, because our webinars are usually twice a week, and they're all recorded and they're posted there.
There you go. For everybody here, go like, share, subscribe. Definitely go check out advantaira.com/Larissa Green. And thank you for coming on here and just sharing the information. I hope people can learn and start building their investment future today, because I think it's really important out there.
Thank
For
you.
everybody here, go like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Larissa.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.